Bill Strong from ChampCar Live, talking with Drew Nabb from Race Tech.
Yeah.
We have a lot of folks out there that do arrive and drives, guys that have built a car and they've rented them out to other folks to drive. We've had some questions about, hey, what do you guys do? Do you have contracts? Do you have, what do you do if somebody totals your car?
Pricing, and like how do you bill and how do you charge? Yep.
Well, what I've done is Troy and I have or actually my previous business partner, he had developed a spreadsheet which priced in all of the cost for fuel, brakes, tires, all that stuff. And then basically we had a little profit built in because it is a business, and we just priced that up, and that would give us the overall cost of the race. We know how much fuel it's going to have, and it also included the cost to get the car to and from the track, depending on how many miles it was. And we put that into Google, and it's a 300-mile away race, and it costs us this much for diesel and the whole bit. And any wear and tear on the trailer, wheels, tires, because we know we're going to lose a tire every couple of races on the trailer, because we overload the hell out of it, and that kind of stuff. But first off, how do you go about figuring out costs for to charge your racers?
Yeah, so I have a model I've followed, but I think it's important to look at the models that are out there for other teams. And so if you look at other teams, you'll see some people do it as a partnership, like they'll all pitch in, the classic, what you imagine ChampCar teams are, which is like 4 buddies, 4 broken bank accounts, 4 pissed off significant others. At one race car, kind of. So that's one model people can do, and you see it less and less each year. And I think the issue with that is, how do you handle somebody wanting out? And you have the same issue with airplanes. When it needs a major repair, people are reluctant to pay in ahead of time or amortize out the cost of major repairs. And then you end up investing a bunch of money, getting the thing out there, and then you have some horrific fault, like the car gets wrecked, needs a motor, and then the car is going to purgatory as you figure out, how are we going to fund this again? It has this, this big bill comes up, or somebody has a kid with somebody, and then you're down to 3 out of 4 guys, and you can see the attrition happen as girlfriends are converted to wives, and that's how we got the Canadian car, not Mopar for Life, but the other Canadian car. The one poor guy left behind by everybody else. They all had found other things in life, and he stuck with the car, and in the end, he had to sell it quickly because he doesn't have space for it, and it was like in a I forgot where it was, but it wasn't easily stored. So you have that business model. The shortcomings of that being, you have to then do everything shared. Then you have the owner-operator business model, which I think of as more as the benevolent dictatorship. Which that's the one most people operate under, and that's what I do. And I think I would recommend that for more people, that you need somebody ultimately in charge of everything. Like not that they have to do every task, absolutely, you delegate or you die, but at the end of the day, it's one person's fault. It's one person's responsibility, and that way you don't have to have a committee of decisions made on the car. People can agree on something, but if nobody's around to say yes or no, that one guy just goes, executive decision, that's happening now.
It's kind of the way I do it. Well, not kind of, it is the way I do it.
So I always did it that way, and I had drivers that would rent for me, and sometimes they'll help work on the car, which is the other problem you have with cars that are shared ownership, is that you look around at those teams where it's a partnership and they all have a portion of the car they own, it ends up being like 1 or 2 of the guys that fix the car. And so it's a unequitable sharing of work with a equitable sharing of investment, maybe. So I always did dictatorship, and for a cost structure standpoint, I think this is an important thing to consider both as a renter and a person renting out a car. fixed cost versus variable cost. So, and how it pertains to the renters as obligatory charge and charges based on how much they drive. So, what I always thought was fair in my eyes was the fixed costs that happen regardless of us driving the car, everybody shares a fraction of that. Meaning the entry fees, getting the car there, whatever it costs to show up and not even turn the thing on,
Right.
we are all sharing that. Whatever happens.
Right.
Car blows up the first stint, sorry. As much as I could, the variable cost or the cost for running the car longer, like fuel, kind of tires, brakes, those get tough because if you run half a race, you can't always just like run the second half of the race
Right.
in those parts again, because sometimes you need more than half a tire to,
Right.
to finish a race.
Well, I looked at it as I charge you for those new parts every time. We wouldn't get new parts every time because that made up for the broken starters or the transmissions that would break, hubs that would fall off, the wheels that would just fly off into nowhere. And it's that would cover those costs, and those guys knew that.
And you probably had the same guys. For me, I
had the same guys
sometimes
over
had
again.
different guys,
Yeah.
and so like if they were in one race and not another, that was how I handled it.
Yeah.
But people do it both ways.
Yeah.
It's important to know that and have that established with your teammates before you get there to the first race. That here's the cost structure of what happens when the car breaks lap 1, breaks midway through, and breaks at the end of the race.
We were pretty lucky because our car usually broke towards the end of the race, and everybody at least got their stints. So that's.
I think it's when it hurts more for people as he breaks. You know,
at the very beginning, that really sucks. So that's why we always had plenty of spares to get the car back to working. And we never had an engine fail. So, well, we had one engine fail, but that was a 24 right at the end of it. So after that, it just packed up and went home.
The other cost thing I think that ends up a factor is, and this is probably the one nobody wants to talk about.
Crash damage.
Yep. Who handles that? And for me, I did very much like you're talking about, where we modeled out the cost. I maybe handled some more of it on my own from time to time because I had some people that would do favors for me, and maybe I didn't charge the gas to get myself there because I was going there anyway, or whatever. But you have to make sure that it is making enough money to pay for itself. And for me, we had a come together meeting as a team, and they decided that we don't want to break stuff anymore. We want to go fast. Like, well, we want to go fast, not break stuff. You're looking at increasing the turnover on parts, like rebuilding more consistently. And the other thing that I did was I had amortized out the cost of the car over about 10 races. Looking at it that if the car can make it to the 10th race, and I've spread out the cost of building the car, which could be anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000, that we had paid that off to ourselves / me. And then the 11th race onward, money in the bank. So I think I made it about 11 or 12 races, and then that was when it ran off in turn 1 and had no brakes and decimated the car. So, so the estimations were really close. I didn't wish for them to be that close, but it's something to consider is, as a team, do you just amortize out the cost of the car all at once? And like when an accident happens that isn't explicitly somebody's fault, you cover it? Or do you go with what I would call the ultimate responsibility model, which is you hold the wheel, anything happens is your fault.
That's what we did. So I have a
Brakes
contract.
come off, anything else, if the wheel falls off, it's your fault. And like you can also have anything in the middle of that. But it's got to be an understanding you make with your renters early on, because you can't figure that out after the fact.
No. And we actually had a contract everybody had to sign. Basically said if you wreck it, you buy it. And we had...
And you probably had a buyout number written in there. Because that's another thing, is these things, you have to have some of those basics out of the way, because people need to understand what their obligation is and you know how much they're on the hook for if they wreck it.
So we always had a spare chassis, and that was just sitting in the shop ready to go in case we needed, in case we totaled one. If it burnt up, we were stuck with the cost of all the stuff that we had at seats and fire systems and electronics and all that stuff would have to be purchased. So we had all that in there, but I only had to use it twice. I wrecked at VIR, tore the nose off. I got that fixed. It cost me, I think, $400 or somewhere around there. Ended up, one of my drivers wrecked at Watkins Glen, broke the suspension. He paid for that. He then wrecked again, this time a little more damage to the car, and we had a talk with him, and he never did that again. But he had to pay for that as well. So the funny thing was, he was our sponsor. He's a good guy. Good guy that he learned really quick.
Those are the hard ones to fire.
Yeah.
But yeah, and the minor incidents, the like broken control arms.
Yeah, those things I usually covered.
And stuff.
Yeah, like, I had tons of those parts. So that kind of stuff, and the hubs flying off, that's part of racing to me. Any bent fenders. Most people know what my car looked like. It was beat to crap. So it's just a matter of pounding them out, put them back on, cover them up. We need to alter it because it got ripped or whatever. We'll alter it. But yeah, we were pretty lucky. As many races as we did, not really tearing stuff up. Transmissions we went through like crazy. The guys helped cover that. But I had enough profit into the business to actually help cover that until the end, where I was paying for a lot of that stuff. But because we were just going through them like every race, two transmissions, so it was, that was pretty pricey. But yeah, so you have to have all this up front with your drivers. Don't be afraid to talk to them about it. Nobody wants to talk about it, but it's something you have to do.
It's uncomfortable before something bad happens. It's a lot more uncomfortable after something bad happens.
Yes. And you do know that with ChampCar and most racing sanctioning bodies, if you wreck at a track and you take out their guardrail, you're also going to get a bill from the track for that guardrail. I had heard rumors that grass seed can even be put on there.
I had a driver, actually, and that was the thing. Like as a group, my car when it wrecked, we had a brake failure. We kind of speed crept like most of the series did, up and increased its power and ran very good brake pad materials, not any bigger brake rotors, because we were, just kind of barely making it. Everything was fine, and then you go the extra 5 miles an hour, and it's absolutely not fine. And apparently, 24-hour races require more than 22 and a half hours of brakes.
Yes.
We didn't get that memo. So, ran off turn one. It
happens rather abruptly, too. You had brakes the last corner, you don't have them for this corner.
Yeah, so he ran off in turn one, and they covered the bill. I don't know if it was that expensive, but we had to pay to put the tire barriers back, which there are 2 tire barriers at the end of turn one if you go far enough, and the pond.
Yes.
Like the driver told me about the pond, which I'd never heard of, nor do I want to find it again.
No.
But you're on the hook for all those. Watkins Glen, you're on the hook for Armco. So all those are considerations in that contract. Driver responsibility for this, because Mike's a great guy, but somebody's got to pay, and he comes to the team and he's like, hey, you signed up.
So
somebody's got to pull up the checkbook.
I get to see the contracts. I get to see the contracts of the track, and ChampCar is on the bill for any damage to the track. So Mike gets a bill, and he has to pass that on to you guys because it's in our BCCR and our operations manual that we do that. So because you caused the incident, not us.
Yep.
So if our pace car hit a wall, we'd have to do it. Pay for it. So, but yeah, just remember that. The cost can be quite high depending on the track, and it may not be much for other tracks. And remember, ChampCar will usually work with you to get it paid, to get it sorted.
Yep.
So
I think and
a lot of it has to do with how you take getting a bill handed to you too.
Yeah.
Yes. Say thank you, sir.
Yeah. No, we didn't. As soon as Mike came with the bill, we were like, we'll absolutely pay it.
Yeah.
We're going to figure out who's paying it. We're going to pay you right now.
Yeah.
And we did, and it wasn't that bad.
That always scared me, though.
He covered some of it for us, I think, which is one of those things that you said.
It all depends on how you.
You have one opportunity to not make it worse for yourself.
Yes,
and after that, talking is only going to make it worse.
I never hit the wall. I was always so afraid of getting a big bill for something, but I never got one, and it's one of those things that's back there, but you try not to think about it. So
another one I'll bring up as a team owner operational expectations, meaning that what do I want you guys to do? How do we conduct our race?
Right.
Because you have everything from guys that are, like, I'm going to take care of the car. We all as a group are going to agree to drive 2 seconds or a second off our fastest pace,
right,
so that we have a car still left. Or I think I have a great car, it's never going to break, everybody just flog the thing like there's no tomorrow. And that pans out, seeing it in other teams, the team dynamics, the guy that flogs it and nobody else is flogging it, and then you watch the video and you see he's ready to stepchild beating it, or not, and it just leads to trouble. And it's one of those things, if you get out of the way early, this is how I expect you to drive my car, this is, from a pace standpoint,
right,
I want you to go, what do you consider 95% pace, don't lock the wheels up, or whatever your team goals are. And also when you're selling the seat, be realistic of, there can only be 20% of the cars that are a top 20 car.
Right.
Top 20%.
Yeah.
So, if you look through the section of the forum where you sell seats, I was surprised at how many 20% cars can possibly exist.
We're a top contending car. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and part of it is, like, you could be, you break stuff, and so maybe that's the dynamics of ChampCar, is that to do well, you're either on the track, the car's fast enough, and then you brake, or you're not. And that's fine as well, but it's an expectation between you and the person renting the car. This is an honest assessment of what this car is like, so that you don't feel like you're being cheated either way, and people don't try too hard. And
that's something Troy really pushed onto me, was like, get your drivers in the car, pull them back a bit, and say, we want everybody having at least one stint for each race, and get everybody in the car, do the stint, and then we can start picking up the pace, but don't kill the car. Of course, Troy gets in my car and
well, he didn't say it applied to him.
99%, yeah. Bill, I'm faster than you. Well, I'm trying to save the car.
Yeah.
The big thing, which we put on we were part of one of the VIR 24s, and we had 3 cars running, and slinging all the drivers, rounding up all the drivers, making sure people are where they're supposed to be at a certain time, making sure people are to fuel. That is probably one of the hardest races I've ever done, because nobody was where we needed them to be when we needed them to be there. And I wouldn't say nobody, but I mean, there was a small percentage of them, and they were usually visiting new drivers. So having everything written down, that was another thing too. When I worked with Riley's team this past summer, he races with IMSA, with the AMG Mercedes. This year, I think they're going to Le Mans with the GT40, or the whatever they call it now, the Ford GT. But when before the race, before I'd arrive at a race, I get an email. It has a bunch of PDFs on there. Within that PDF is who's flying into the race, are they getting rental cars, who's picking who's up, who's driving in each van or minivan or pickup truck, who's sleeping at the trailer, who's, with us it would be who's sleeping at the trailer, who's sleeping at a hotel, what's everybody's phone number, how can they be contacted, email addresses, that stuff, especially for newer drivers. And then what their expectations are, that everybody needs to be at the track at 9 o'clock on Friday. We will finish up prepping the car, because my car was never finished. We need to do alignment. We need to make sure everybody fits, make sure everybody goes through the required fire testing. Make sure they know where everything is on the car. Egress, and we go through a couple of practices of fuel. And driver, what's expected for everybody. And all that is written down, and then we also sent out to all new drivers a sheet that told you every switch on the dashboard, what we expect to see, where the needles are supposed to point on the gauges, and with little pictures of the dashboard, so they can at least have a review of what's going on, or they know what they're looking at when they get to the track. And because a lot of guys jump in the car and they have no clue where the switches are. They don't know what number car yours are.
24-hour races are the big one, but you see the established teams will have jokingly a team mom. The team mom, it could be either gender. But a person that is not in charge of the technical aspects of the car that is in charge of the logistics.
Yes.
And
that's huge.
grabs those drivers. As a team owner, you know this. Everybody gets annoyed with the pee driver.
Yeah.
Like, the guy that always has to pee like 10 seconds
before he gets in the car.
in.
Yes.
And you're like, you peed 10 minutes ago.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, you can't make it that fast. like if you do, you need to get dialysis.
Yeah.
Like we're gonna get a machine. We're gonna roll it next to you so you don't have to pee anymore. He just pumps it out.
Yeah.
You that your blood.
I won't say anybody's names, but yes, we have those
But yeah,
too.
everybody has that guy, and it's a nervous thing. We all experience as drivers. We just say we don't experience it. Sound tough.
Yeah.
But it's an element of it that the team manager has to handle while somebody else is worried about the technical aspects of the car.
Yeah.
Just make sure that the driver's in the pits, people are in the pits, and that's an important dynamic as a team owner, that you've kind of got to find that person.
Right.
It could be one of your renters, but handing off the you're in charge, you're responsible.
You have a guy. You usually have a person that may not be as technical and doesn't know how to use a wrench or whatever. That's a guy you kind of put in charge of.
They can yell at people.
Yep.
So in the car pits without a driver, it's you don't want to say it's fault, right? Because this is not pro racing. You're not going to fire anybody, but there has to be a responsibility chain of command that it is somebody's responsibility, and if it was missed, there's no ambiguity over who should have done it.
But that's a difference between the guys that are on the podium and the guys that are not. A lot of times.
That is, and even I'd argue the teams that run a majority of laps.
Yeah.
Because you see all kinds of weird things that take cars out, like. And I guess let's pick on the teams that are really good because we know their way to pick on them.
Yeah.
But I remember Simon Says winning the 24-hour race. I remember the year they knocked the windshield out of the car and still won the race.
Oh yes,
The hood pins came out, and just those things that you don't think about. That it doesn't take a lot of technical expertise to put the hood pins in, but a team that is really good and has won that race an obscene amount of times, an amount of times that makes everybody sick, including the two of us. And they have this basic failure because you can only ask so much of a group of people for such a long period of time before mistakes happens. And you need a person that's fresh and can think about just that.
So we just had, speaking of hood pins, we just had a team out in California, one of the uncommon friends, Bruce Mills, on our board of directors. Immaculately built car. I think it's one of the best looking cars in our series, and everything on that thing is spotless and custom built by Steve Nichols, who's a ex-Formula One engineer, and it's an awesome car. But they had hood pins just pull right out of the sheet metal, and it was a simple fit because I saw how they mounted them, and it's like, ooh, I wouldn't have done it like that, only because I've had hood pin failure. And it's like, okay, we add a little more weight right there and it's okay. So it's those little things like that can really ruin your day, because they will black flag you, and that 5 minutes trying to figure out how to fix it, or 10 minutes of putting tape on your hood like Bruce Mills did, can cost you a race.
Or the 3 a.m. VIR time to pit for fuel that we don't have. You see that stuff pan out, and so it's a logistics thing and it's responsibility.
Oh, all the fuel jugs are empty. Yes, because somebody forgot to fill them.
It's one of those things you work out with. Or the I heard a team tell. We're getting sidetracked.
That's all right. All right.
I had a team tell me the mythical driver of Nelson's Ledges.
Oh, the ghost driver.
The ghost driver.
Driver. Yes, I've heard this.
This car pulls in, and this is a second or third hand story, but
I've heard it from first hand.
The abbreviated version is car pulls in the middle of the night to do a stint. And it's one of these teams that just isn't prepared to this level. They don't have a team mom, and they don't have the other elements worked out. They probably have a guy that's really good technically to keep the car running, because it's still running, which is an accomplishment in and of itself. But the car pulls in, and the driver pulls into the pit box, and there's nobody there, right? And so he gets out, and he's frustrated, and he uses some kind of colorful language, and he notices a guy in the pit stall next to him has his fire suit gear on, and the guy looks at him, and the driver's waves come on, can you help out? I gotta put fuel in it. All right. So this mystery guy fuels his car up. They finish fueling it, and the driver just got out, and he goes, man, like, I am beat. And I think my teammates are asleep. I mean, you want to drive it? So the guy hops in that fueled the car, goes out, drives it, apparently, like, sets some really fast
times.
Sets a fast time in the dark.
Yeah.
Pulls back into the pits. Nobody's there, and he just parks the car and walks away.
Well, they said that he parked the car. The guy, and no, I think the guys were. Troy was telling me this.
Oh yeah, no, the guys woke up then. Yeah,
the guys woke up, and they're in the pit. Got out and
this guy gets out of the car, waits, and walks
and
away.
just walks into the fog because it was really foggy, and just walks out of the fog, and everybody's just standing like, "Who the hell is that?"
So it's the headless Stig came by and wheeled our car. Yeah, so stuff like that. You know, as a team owner, those are the issues you run into, and you have to sort them out. And finding somebody else to do that element for you while you're handling the driving and fixing and everything else is just a lifesaver.
Yeah.
So if you're running a team and you want to rent seats out, ask other people. Other people have even offered to like share their contracts. To like give you an idea of what you should probably expect somebody to sign as a release of liability.
And remember, we're not lawyers, so if you need a lawyer, have somebody look at it. But most of the time, it's just gentleman agreements. You know, you don't pay up, we'll handle it racer style.
Yep, and maybe the last thing, payment. I in the history of me doing it, I've only had one person stiff me, and it was not much. But I learned my lesson.
I never had an issue with that. I never had an issue.
It was a newly acquired driver. Maybe we cover how you acquire drivers next. But he stiffed me on what I had as fixed cost. And it was the one mistake I'd made in the past where guys that I know personally, that I've raced with for forever, and are like, I know where they live, they don't stiff me money. And so I trusted a new guy to this level of, okay, well, I'll get your entry fee costs. He shows up to the race, and this is a race where we had a problem with the car in the beginning, and we kind of turned around all of a sudden, and this guy just bounced and left.
Wow.
Which sucks for him because the car had pulled in off track in the very beginning of the race and was overheating, and we figured out it was an airflow problem, and we fixed it with cutting up a drip tray and making a duct out of it. Ran total 22 of the 24 hours just without him, and we covered the billing on our own. But another one of those things, you know, ChampCar's not going to intervene if you don't get paid. Like, this is on you.
Yeah, it's not us.
And it's an expectation to get out of the way early, and I always collect those down payments.
Troy and I, we had
cost.
Yeah, we had deadlines. You guys have to have this money to us. We took non-refundable deposits because that money's gone. We never had that issue, but we did have problems. We had drivers that suddenly something came up, so we just transfer their race to another race. But I had a family of drivers that pretty much the same drivers over and over that raced with us all year long. So I think I only had to cancel one race because we just couldn't get the car fixed in time. But you know, a lot of times the guys would come down to help put the car back together too. That was really awesome.
Those are the teammates you need.
Yeah. Even though they were states away, that was.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Now acquiring drivers.
That's the hard part.
This is one that I'll say I have been a part of teams that acquire new drivers. I myself have been able to luckily draw on the car that I bought way too cheap to get started in all this.
Yeah.
Which is good that was cheap because every other element of my ChampCar experience has like been at a deficit of some amount or another. But my car came with drivers because I bought it as I already put together a race car and you know, fixed it up from there, but you acquire some names, people that you could trust to drive the thing. And you can pick up drivers from the forums, you can pick them up from other places, you do track days, you see people, instructors, a lot of different venues. I think the recommendation I would make to a new team is I never wanted to take more than one new driver to me
at a time
at any event.
Yeah.
And that was only because I could then make sure that I spend a little bit more time, or have one of my guys that I knew raced the car a bunch, kind of look into it a little bit, because even if they've experienced other cars, they may have problems with this car, they don't fit in the seat or whatever else, and like I can't be dealing with that for more than one person at a time. And I think it's important to note that a lot of people that rent seats repeatedly.
Right.
And once they get on a particular team, they'll rent from the same team.
Right.
But they, in general, have rented several times.
Right.
And so if you ask them, how many people have you rented from, and if it's like one or two people, you probably have to consider that they may be fairly novice in their experience level.
Right.
And be real honest with yourself about your car's prep, the way that you developed your car, and how easy it is for a new driver to drive.
Right.
And how accommodating is the balance of your car, how hard is it to drive, how easy is it to spin, how much do you feel like you want to win, because I've seen friends get broken up over a difference between the expectation and reality of what the team is capable of, how well prepared the team made the driver, and how well prepared the driver was.
Right.
You go out there and you try to do more than you really can, and you're not comfortable, but you feel pushed or pressured by the team, and then if something happens, everybody feels bad. The driver feels bad, the team blames the driver, the driver hates himself, and
I always thought there was a good point of letting the new driver know what you expect from him.
Yes.
Like I would tell, I'm not expecting you to do fast times. I don't want you to do fast times. I want you to get used to the car, and know that the MR2 is trying to kill you every lap, or at least ours is. And it's just, and you put that fear of death into them, and usually they'll pull back and they'll move up quick, and next thing you know, they're pulling faster laps than you. Win. So, but it's the last time we drove the MR2 at actually the last two races at Utah and VIR, I had two totally brand new drivers. One of them was my son, and never raced before in his life, and never driven an MR2 on used tires in the rain at a really slick track in the cold. And he spun it a million times, and he had a blast. But he that was the first time I really had a driver of that level that had never even done a track day. So that was a little scary, but I got over it real quick, and he had a blast. He had the same responsibilities as everybody else. But my other driver was brand new. He was an IMSA racer, so he had a lot of experience, not a little.
Yep.
And he struggled as well as I did in the rain and with that car, and we had a broken engine mount, so it just made it even worse.
And the best renter drivers are the ones that are team owners.
Yes.
Because I've rented seats from people. Typically, when I go rent a seat, it's going to be majority of mine have been for reduced cost, because I'm basically
helping
an arrive and fix, and the drive is optional. but if you've owned a car, or if the person you're renting to has owned the car before, or owned a car before, they kind of know the deal. They're a lot more likely to see it through your eyes.
Right.
And so that can help as well. So stick to a majority of renters that have rented before, possibly have owned a car before. And outside of that, if you have a car that newbies can drive that is easy to drive, maybe take one or two on. Mm-hmm. Or, I've made a requirement before to a guy that was a friend of mine, never raced before. I said, you need to do a track day at least before we'll let you in one of the cars.
Right.
And we're going to pick one of the cars that's slower and prepped to be much more forgiving.
Right.
And, yes, it is practicing before you even do your first race, but you owe us that responsibility to ensure that we have a car that the rest of us can still drive. You don't kill it for us.
Right.
And it's also in your best interest as well.
Well, a lot of times you can ask the guy to pay for a track day, and a lot of guys will do that.
Yeah.
They'll pay for the track day, take the car out there, and have, learn the track, and show you what they can and can't do.